All right, what's going on, everyone? Today we are making our predictions, full card predictions for UFC Vegas 67. That's headlined by Kelvin Gastelum taking on Nassourdine Imavov. The first show of the year, making these predictions early. I couldn't wait any longer. So hopefully you guys are on the same page as me, giving out these predictions. The betting odds not really out right now, so we're just making straight up money line plays, making our predictions, and we'll kind of take it from there. As you can see below, my 2023 record, first card. So we don't have a record yet, but you guys can track along, tail me if I'm doing well, fade me if I fall off a cliff. I don't care. Either way, we're talking about some fights. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, all that fun stuff. And we'll just get right into it. And we're going to go top to bottom here. So first fight on the card, the main event, Kelvin Gastelum taking on Nassourdine Imavov. And I might get a little risky. I might. In the first fight, the first main event of the year, I might go with the underdog here, Kelvin Gastelum, by decision. And it's hard with Kelvin because you look at this guy, extremely good. I think what is happening is he's just falling victim to an elite level of competition. You know, he had his big ups and downs so far, beats Bisping, beats Jacare Souza, goes toe-to-toe with Israel Adesanya for the interim belt. And then since then, he's dropped 4 or 5, that only win coming to Ann Heinisch, which kind of shows that he belongs in this top 15. But the losses, Darren Till, Jack Hermanson, Robert Whittaker, Jared Cannonier, that is mostly the top of the top there. And we know this guy can go 5 rounds for days. We know he's got a chin. He's durable. Very rarely gets finished. Has good pop in the hands. He can wrestle. That's what I'm looking for here. Is the two things that I'm really looking for is the cardio to take over and the wrestling to be there, because Imavov, very dangerous. But I just don't see the cardio. I've seen this guy fall off a cliff after round 2. Most recently against Joaquin Buckley, that cardio is not holding up. He potentially loses that fight if there's a round 4. Maybe even gets finished because he looked gassed. But before that, the first 3 rounds, he has all the tools to win the fight. He's very tall for the division, very big, has a sneaky ground game, good submissions. They call him the Russian sniper. He's good on the feet. So, yes, I can see him winning this fight for sure. He deserves to be the favorite. But I'm going to take a flyer. I'm going to say Kelvin Gastelum takes over starting in round 3. I think he's durable enough. I think he can work the wrestling. I think he can pull it out. I do. This could look like a terrible pick. I understand that Imavov probably should win this fight, but I'm going with the underdog. Next up. Now, Shavkat, we know he's not facing Jeff Neal. Jeff Neal had to pull out due to injury. That sucks. We all want to see Shavkat fight. Are they going to find a replacement? You see guys like Brian Barberena came out. He's throwing his hat in the ring there, but they did not take that bait. They didn't want to see that fight. And the problem is we want to see Shavkat fight, but I don't think anyone really wants to fight this guy. That's worth watching. Barberena, he's not there for me. I don't think he even comes close in that fight at this point. I don't think anyone's really going to step up. People want Chimaev. I don't see him doing that. Originally, I was going to take Shavkat to win. I thought Jeff Neal might be able to handle it over 3 rounds and go to decision. Thought that was going to be a good fight, a good test. So it's a bummer. If Shavkat does find a replacement, it's Shavkat all day, most likely. But we'll see what they decide to do. It's a bummer. We want to see this guy fight. On to the next one. Punahele Soriano taking on Roman Kopylov. And guys, I'm going with Punahele Soriano here. I don't see it with Roman Kopylov. He doesn't really do anything very well or even exceptional or great. He's a striker. He's a kickboxer. That's what he's known for. Doesn't really have that ground game. He will hold the 3-inch reach advantage. From a technical standpoint, he'll be the better striker. But I'm going to go with Punahele Soriano, who's the guy who has more power. So if he's able to land, he's going to deal more damage. Judges love the damage. And Soriano has that wrestling in his back pocket. So I think this one's pretty simple for me. I just don't really see it with Kopylov. He hasn't really shown us the ability to be even an above average UFC fighter. I don't really see it. Soriano has had a couple good wins here. I think he can get this one done. So give me Punahele Soriano to win by round 2 TKO. Next fight on the card, Dan Ige taking on Damon Jackson. This is an interesting matchup here because Dan Ige, he's just one of those guys. He's sneaky in that 145-pound division. We've seen him almost be in the top 5, definitely crack the top 10 at some point. He's always a tough out, man. He's scrappy. He's good on the feet. He's well-rounded. If he wants to take it to the ground, he's a black belt in BJJ, former Division III wrestler. There's a lot of good things to like about Dan Ige, but it just seems like he hits his ceiling at some point and he can be defeated, not rather easily, but when the matchup makes sense and someone has a ground game that's greater than his, I think that's where we kind of see a big fault. He can be outstruck. We saw Calvin Kattar, obviously a very good striker. He was able to handle Ige. Man, I want to pick Ige because he is that dog. He is scrappy. I think he's always live. Probably will be an underdog here, but Damon Jackson, man, massive for this division. The 145 weight class, 5'11", 71-inch reach. He actually doesn't have the reach advantage, but he's just got that tall, lanky frame, quietly on a 4-fight win streak. Most recently defeated Pat Sabatini, which is insane because he has a very high-level ground game. But it's just Damon Jackson on the ground. He's just different. I think he's a different level. I think he will be better than Dan Ige on the ground. And I think that's going to be the difference maker. I really do. Now, Ige, I think, he's tough enough. He's good enough, savvy enough on the ground to handle defensively, at least, some of Damon Jackson's attacks here. But I think Damon Jackson wins this fight, does not find the submission, but he wins by unanimous decision. And I feel pretty confident there. And I know Dan Ige, he's sneaky. People are kind of quick to forget about him. But I got to go with Damon Jackson, soaring on that 4-fight win streak, coming off the win over Pat Sabatini. He looks damn good. Give me Damon Jackson by decision. And that takes us to the next one. Jimmy Flick taking on Charles Johnson. This is, it's interesting because Jimmy Flick recently retired. I think we kind of forget who he was just 2 years ago. Looks like a wizard on the ground. Had a big win on the Dana White Contender Series. UFC debut, gets another big win. I think a lot of people are talking about this guy. There's a lot of hype. And then all of a sudden he kind of turns around and just says, you know what? I got to retire right now. Family, personal reasons. But then he's back. Almost 2 years later, he is back. He's ready to roll. No pun intended, though, because this guy, he can submit just about anyone. 14 of 16 pro wins by submission. He's a problem on the ground. Now, I just don't see that being enough against Charles Johnson, who seems to also have a very good game on the ground. You saw him against Muhammad Mokaev. Yeah, Mokaev had 12 takedowns, but overall he was 12 of 26 on those takedowns. So percentage-wise, not that great. The fact that he was able to get back up that many times against a high-level grappler like Mokaev, then he takes on a guy like Zumagulov who likes to go to the ground. He edges out a close split decision win there. Tall, rangy guy, keeps coming forward, definitely has a chin. He's got some good power in his hands. We see the good ground game. I think he just has enough at this point. He has the momentum on his side. Jimmy Flick, with the retirement, you don't really know what you're going to get back out of this. But I think Charles Johnson wins this fight. With Jimmy Flick, if you do look at his pro losses, 4 of 5 of those pro losses are by TKO or knockout. So for me, I'll go with Charles Johnson to win this fight, and I'll take a round 2 TKO. That brings us to the next fight. So that's off the main card now. We're into the prelims. First prelim fight, Allan Nascimento taking on Carlos Hernandez. And, originally I was thinking Nascimento might just win this rather easily, but the more I watch some tape on Hernandez, man, this is going to be a close fight. These guys stack up very well. And one fun thing about both of these guys is they go to split decision a lot. Nascimento, You know, I wasn't really talking about this guy all that much, but then he goes out there and he beats a guy like Jake Hadley pretty easily. And you look at those split decisions against Tagir. That's a solid fighter. I believe his UFC debut, or it might have been Dana White Contender Series, that split loss was to Halian Pava, another solid fighter, that ages well. I have his attention now. I'm sorry, he has my attention now. The ground game is very solid. I believe he's training with Charles Oliveira. He can control you on the mat. He throws a pretty high level of output. We saw it against Paiva. He had over 100 strikes thrown. Over 100 strikes landed, that is. So high level of output, good on the ground. He's picking up a nice win over Jake Hadley. Both of those splits could go either way. I'm impressed with Nascimento. I'm looking at him now and I'm saying, you know what, there might be something there. And then you look at a guy like Hernandez, Dana White Contender Series fight, split decision, UFC debut against Altamirano. That's a split decision win. So this feels like it's going to be very close because this guy, again, he throws a pretty decent level of output. 77 strikes landed, Dana White Contender Series, 84 landed, UFC debut. He's well-rounded. The ground game checks out. It really just feels like these guys stack up well. I think we're going to get a really good fight. Originally, I thought Nascimento was going to dominate, but I do think it's going to be a close one. But I will take Nascimento to win by decision, mostly based on the experience factor. I think he gets it done. Next up, Ketlen Vieira taking on Rocky Pennington. Another fight. Both these girls match up very well with each other. You get Vieira 7-2 in the UFC. Solid wins. Sarah McMahon, Sijara Eubanks, Miesha Tate, Holly Holm. Even though the home win was controversial, I did think Holly won. You know, she's big for the division. She's aggressive, slow moving, but she does have solid power. And she's got a pretty solid ground game as well. But that kind of sums up Rocky Pennington as well. You know, she's the aggressive fighter. She's the tried and true veteran in the UFC, and she's on a 4-fight win streak. Marion Renault, Macy Chiasson, Aspen Ladd. I mean, I think this should be a pick'em fight. I haven't seen the odds on this one. It feels like this should be a pick'em fight. Do you take the veteran or do you take the younger girl and Vieira? I'm kind of at a toss-up here. I wanted to go with Pennington, the veteran, but I'm going to go with the younger. More to prove here. Looking to move forward after some big wins. Give me Ketlen Vieira by unanimous decision. And again, I think back-to-back fights here are going to be super close. We could see a couple split decisions for sure. Next fight, Daniel Argueta versus Isaac Dulgarian. This is going to be a close one again. You know, off the bat, again, I was looking at Dan Argueta and I was like, you know what? He's going to dominate this fight. Former LFA champ, more experience, gets his UFC debut against Damon Jackson. Obviously, you kind of give him a pass there. Damon Jackson is nasty. But you saw the glimpses of it. You know, he was able to get a takedown on Jackson. And yes, he was controlled for the most part, but he was able to get some control time in there. And you go back, you look at some of the tape on this guy. He's explosive on the feet, a little reckless, but he goes in there throwing bombs, loves to go for the takedowns, good ground and pound, good grappling. He's kind of like a mini Michael Chandler is how I would put it. And so I like Argueta for a lot of reasons. And then you look at Dulgarian, and he's the much greener fighter, 5-0 as a pro, just turned pro in 2021, finished all 5 fights. He fights out of FAC, that's the Missouri regional scene. He has the ties with Glory MMA and Fitness, James Krause. You kind of wonder how that's going to affect him, who's going to be in his corner. But the guy's, he's got a pretty nasty ground game, man. He's got 2 submissions on record and then 3 of his wins by TKO or knockout. And a lot of those are happening on the ground with the ground and pound. So you get 2 guys who want to take the fight to the ground, who are pretty aggressive, seem to have good power. This is going to be a close one, man. But I don't think I can go with the guy who just turned pro in 2021. I know Argueta, not a veteran by any means, but it feels like former LFA champ, already, you know, paid his dues, UFC debut. I think he should beat Dulgarian. Originally, I was going Argueta round 1 knockout, but I'll give Dulgarian the benefit of the doubt here. Let's go with Dan Argueta by decision. Next fight, Umar Nurmagomedov versus Raoni Barcelos. This is such a great matchup, and I love Raoni Barcelos. The only problem with him is that he peaked too late. His name got out there. He was putting on very good performances, and he was already in his mid-30s. And now, we kind of start to see the slowdown. He had back-to-back losses against Timur and against Victor Henry. Like, I don't know what happened with the Victor Henry fight. A guy making his UFC debut, and he gets absolutely worked in that fight. And then he bounces back, gets the win over Trevin Jones, and you're like, okay, maybe he's still there. He's very well-rounded. I love Raoni Barcelos, very well-rounded fighter. Love watching him fight. And if he shows up, if the best version of Raoni Barcelos shows up, this is going to be a close fight. But the fact that we've seen the back-to-back losses recently, it just makes me, and he's now 35, I'm not putting my money there. And it's cousin Umar Nurmagomedov, 3-0 in the UFC. 2 finishes so far against Sergey Morozov and Brian Kelleher. Both of those aging very well. 11 minutes of control time against Nate Maness. He's a high-level wrestler and grappler, but he's also very good on the feet. That's what really separates him from the pack. When you talk about these Dagestani fighters, yeah, he can wrestle, he can go to the ground, but his striking is very good. So I think if the best version of Barcelos shows up, he's got a chance, but I got to go with Umar to win. Give me cousin Umar to win, unanimous decision. And you got to keep an eye on this guy. He could have a very big breakout 2023. Next fight, Abdul Razak Alhassan taking on Claudio Ribeiro. Another great matchup. The matchmaking is great here. You're getting 2 of the same styles so Alhassan, 11-5 pro record. The dude is absolutely shredded. He is very dangerous. He's going out there looking to finish fights. They call him Judo Thunder, so he does have the ground game, but hasn't really flashed it in a long time. I think he's fallen in love with the hands, fallen in love with the power. He wants to go out there and kill you and early, because after round 1, the dude just simply drops off. He just does not have the cardio to sustain even a 3-round fight. So it's interesting to see how this is going to play out, because he's going to go in there looking to throw bombs. He should have the wrestling advantage if he chooses to take it to the ground. But with Ribeiro, he is coming off a very impressive Dana White Contender Series win where he got the knockout in 25 seconds, landed one of the biggest, cleanest left hooks you'll ever see. And you kind of go back and look at some of the tape. That's what the guy does. He isn't the most technical by any means, but these hooks that he throws have intention to knock you out quick. But they're, these giant looping shots. So if he's going in there throwing these big, sloppy looping hooks, he could get caught. But at the same time, if he's landing, the other guy's going down. So I see 2 guys going in there, trading massive shots. One of them is going down. And you throw in the fact that Ribeiro shows good takedown defense. He's going to be able to negate that side of Judo Thunder, if that's even an aspect in this fight. I don't know if it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be. I'm betting the under in this fight, and I'll go with the guy, Claudio Ribeiro, the younger guy, more to prove, making his UFC debut. I think he can win this fight. But it seems like it should be a toss-up, because someone's going to get caught. And Alhassan has some huge hands, for sure. But for my money, give me Ribeiro to win, round 1 TKO. Next fight, Mateus Mendonca taking on Javid Basharat. Man, for those of you who don't know, Javid Basharat is a certified prospect, a 5-star prospect. He's a stud. The fact that Mendonca is making his UFC debut against a guy like Basharat doesn't really make all that much sense. And it's a shame, because Mendonca, he's young, 23 years old. We saw in the Dana White Contender Series, he had a quick round 1 knockout. But you don't want to be fooled by the power, because you also look at his record. He's got 4 subs on his resume. So it seems like, yeah, he's got good power. He's got good grappling. And I think he would be a legitimate UFC prospect. And I do believe he can be a legitimate UFC prospect. You're just running into a guy in Basharat who seems to have every aspect of MMA down. Everything seems to check out. Dana White Contender Series guy, 2-0 in the UFC, back-to-back decision wins. Trevin Jones, Tony Gravely. Not the best of names, but it's solid to start your UFC career, and he's dominating those fights. Tall, lanky frame, solid stand-up game, good level of output, high level of grappling on the ground. Honestly, I think Mendonca is a solid fighter, a solid prospect. I just don't see how you're picking against Basharat at this point. And while Basharat, yes, seems to go to decision a lot, I'll take a flyer on it just because Mendonca, the younger guy, inexperienced, has been facing a low level of competition on the regional scene. So you don't really know how he's going to stack up against the UFC's level. So I'll go with Basharat, and I'll go with the round 3 TKO. No problem there. It's Basharat all day for me. Next up, Priscila Cachoeira taking on Sijara Eubanks. I think this is going to be a sneaky, fun fight because Cachoeira, they call her the zombie girl, and they call her that for a reason. She just goes in there, head down, swinging like crazy, wants to be in a brawl. And, you know, in women's MMA, you don't really see a lot of finishes, especially by knockout or TKO. And, you know, she's shown that she's got power in her hands. 3 of her 4 UFC wins are by TKO. 2 of them in round 1, 1 of them in round 2. She just goes in there, gets dirty, in and out. But the only thing is she doesn't have a ground game. She goes in there swinging, good striker, good volume, good power, but she doesn't have a ground game. That's her clear weakness. And Sijara Eubanks does have some pretty decent wrestling. You know, you look at her record, 7-7, just very middling. It feels like she's better than that. Some glimpses of, I'm not going to call her greatness, but she sometimes shows that she's better than that record at least. You know, she's got some power in her hands. Always a tough fight. I kind of feel like the way that judging is going these days, yeah, if Eubanks is able to take it to the ground, it doesn't really matter unless there's significant damage coming out of that or submission attempts. And the way that Cachoeira fights, high level of output, again, good power. She should be able to land more damage. I got to go with Cachoeira here. I think she can find the TKO finish, or if it goes to the judges' scorecards, the damage will be there. But Eubanks is tough. Give me Cachoeira by decision. I don't hate that. And then the next fight, the last fight on the card here, Mateus Rebecki taking on Nick Fiore. Rebecki was originally supposed to take on Umar Morales, but I think it was due to injury. Morales had to pull out. Nick Fiore is in. He's a New England cartel guy right down the street from me, fights out of New Hampshire, making his UFC debut, 6-0 pro record, fights in the Combat Zone MMA promotion, which is, I believe, Calvin Cater's promotion. But it feels like he hasn't been facing a high level of competition. He's only 6-0 pro record, kind of getting rushed into this. That's what you see a lot of the time, right? Like this guy obviously wants to make it to the UFC. They're kind of rushing it because they have an opportunity. You know, you take on a tough guy in Rebecki, and then hopefully in your next fight, they kind of hook you up and you get an easier fight. And that's kind of what it feels like here. Fiore just kind of saving the day, stepping in here. He is a BJJ he is a black belt in BJJ. Very good ground game, good submissions. But he's taken on Rebecki, who is just an absolute animal on the ground. Rebecki undersized for the division, 5'7", only a 66-inch reach. That's very small for 155. But the dude's just a bulldog. He's just going in there, trying to just ragdoll you to the ground. He seems to have the cardio to do it over 3 rounds. If he gets you to the ground, he's dangerous with that ground and pound. He can take your back, choke you out, gets into that crucifix position, and just hammers away until the ref stops it. So, you know, maybe Fiore, because Rebecki takes this to the ground nonstop throughout the fight, maybe Fiore can find a submission. Like, there's a part of me that wants to take a flyer on it. But Rebecki, 17 pro fights, feels like he'll just have more experience. He'll just have his way on the ground. Fiore stepping in on short notice here. I don't love that. So I'm going to go with Rebecki to win this fight. And just due to the inexperience of Fiore, I'll go with Rebecki to win by round 2 TKO. We see the ground and pound in there, and Rebecki gets the win for what I believe is his UFC debut. And that's all that we got. That's the card for UFC Vegas 67. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know your picks, your opinions in the comments. Again, make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Steve with the MMA Minute, and have a great day. And as always, guys, good luck.